Great. We have the recording started. My name is Cheryl Buckwalter, and I am a consultant and educator, as you can see on the screen here, as well as a residential landscape designer. And I have a number of certifications that you can see across the bottom of the screen. For Rescape California, that's a fire resilient landscape design qualification. So let's go ahead. I'm glad that you're here today. What I want to say, first of all, is, you know, even though it's not raining right now, I absolutely love capturing and reusing rain and letting it soak into the ground. So I'd first like to introduce to you Rebecca Scott. She is the Director of Operations with Citrus Heights Water District.
Thank you everyone for coming today. We're so excited to hear from Cheryl about capturing rain for our yards and landscapes. Just wanted to touch on a few services that the Water District offers to our customers. We offer free outdoor irrigation reviews, and then we also have a free smart controller direct installation program. And then we also offer several rebates. We have them for high efficiency toilets and clothes washers, and also pressure reduction valves. So you can contact us at the email address there below, or if you just go to chwd.org, you can see all of the programs and rebates we have there as well. So I'll turn it back to Cheryl.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so this webinar will be recorded, which is really great. So you don't have to take a lot of notes if you don't want to. And there is a handout with a number of resources for you. And both the recording and the handout will be on the Citrus Heights Water District's website. Check in about 2 days. Give us a little bit of time to get that on the website. Also, on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, you'll see a little chat box. And so with that, you can go into the chat and enter your questions. And at the end, we will be answering them. A couple of things that I'd like to mention is that, you know, we do have upcoming webinars for Citrus Heights Water District. So at that website, check for those as well. So we have another one coming up soon. And, you know, technology is technology. So every once in a while, we may run into an issue. And if we do, you know, just bear with us and we'll resolve it as soon as possible. So let's get started. You know, as I said, you saw this webinar and you might have been thinking, capture rain, what am I going to capture rain for? And, you know, it hasn't rained for a while. It doesn't rain for many months out of the year. However, why do we want to capture it? Well, rain is free, number one. It's really, really clean water. It can help reduce the use of potable water, you know, the drinking water that we have and that we're so fortunate to have. Rainwater can also flush salts out of the soil around a plant's roots, making it healthier. And then it also carries with it natural fertilizer. It's like a natural fertilizer with minerals and beneficial microorganisms and so forth. So with the things that I'm going to show you today, some of them are considered passive, meaning they don't take any energy. And so there is a savings to our resources as well as a cost saving. You know, we're going to talk about that more. And then some methods that I'll show you are ways that you can save it and store it. So each category today, as you can see on the screen, that says slow it, spread it, sink it, and store it. That's what we want to do. On the left-hand side, runoff and water waste. On the right is a lovely garden. At the foundation of what I'm talking about today is river-friendly landscaping and the watershed approach to that. What does that mean? It's an integrated method to the design, construction, and management of the landscapes. So it's a process that takes into consideration all the resources, the you know, and needs of pollinators, bees, other organisms, and life in our landscapes. And so, you know, we need to think about all the conditions: sun, shade, do we have a slope, and those sorts of things. But this is just an example of the types of things: design, installation, and then management. So when I speak of what is a watershed, well, it's basically, as you can see in these images, an area of land where all the water that is either on top of it, like like snow and rainwater, and all of the water under it basically drains into creeks, streams, rivers, ultimately the ocean. Sometimes they flow into interior water bodies like lakes, Folsom Lake and so forth. Okay, and Lake Tahoe. But what I'd like to ask you to think about today is your home as this mini watershed. Yes, there is the big picture here that you're seeing, but every landscape can function as a mini watershed, and I'll show you that in just a moment. So here are the main principles of this type of landscaping. You want to select local and native, what I refer to as either climate appropriate or climate adapted plants, so they belong here. Group your plants by their water needs, which is referred to as hydrozoning, and then design and install highly efficient irrigation equipment. And then the focus for today, of course, is capturing and using that rainwater as a resource. So this is what I was speaking about. Your own landscape in your home is a mini watershed. So the top image here shows that what we refer to as a dehydrated site, okay? The rain and the runoff drains away from the property and into the storm drains, takes with it pesticides and other pollutants and that sort of thing. And then, unfortunately, all those pollutants run into our waterways untreated. However, if we have a hydrated site, we have all these downspouts, the water off the roof is coming into the downspouts and going into the landscape. So it's slowly soaking into the soil. The soil helps to cleanse the pollutants out of the contaminated water. It also can reduce local flooding. There's just so many benefits to this type of landscaping. So let's learn more about how you can do this. Slow it is the first one we're going to talk about, slowing that water in your landscape. And there are a number of ways to do it. And in addition to this spreading and sinking and storing, and I'll show you examples in each one, but consider this, maybe you can do one of these methods in your landscape, maybe you can do many. So I encourage you to be thinking about your own landscape as you learn about some of these options. So again, it's this integrated approach that we take. I will say also that some of these options are less expensive, require less labor and maintenance than other options. So I'll touch on that as well. All right, slow it. As you can see, we're going to start at the top. We want to start at the roof, as you see on this picture on the right-hand side. Here's the gutter it goes into the gutter. It goes into the downspout and then flows into this bed that's got a depression in it that's got cobble. So what that is doing, it's slowing down the speed in which that water is coming off the roof, basically. And so it will slow it down and let it soak into the soil. On the left here, we have a rain chain. There's all kinds of fun options out there for rain chains and decorative things that are fun. More about downspouts. Here in the middle, we have a downspout that's flowing into a little creek bed. This is one at the Elk Grove Rain Garden. If you've not been there, I encourage you to go there. And then just an example of a creek bed. And when you're designing your creek beds, think about how they look at streams and so forth in nature. You want them to be as natural looking as possible. Here are a couple of other ones that you can see. This is really low cost here, other than if you needed to purchase these materials. Here's a depression on the right that's in the soil that allows that water to slowly sink in, and it channels it to where we want it to be. Downspouts and drain pipes. These are a couple of challenges. On the left, there's all this, what we call hardscape. So it's the hard surfaces that don't require any water. And it's flowing into at least this area where there's soil, and then there's these rocks that will slow the flow down. On the right, it's taken a little bit more to do labor-wise, expense-wise, because here's a downspout that gets connected to a drain pipe. Then they have to run it under the concrete and either break that out and put new in, and then it can flow into this area. Another way to slow it is if you have a slope, create some of these terraces. And what's nice about this is then you end up with flat planting areas, and it's more easy to walk across as well. Just a reminder, please enter your questions into the chat, okay? All right, let's go to spread it. So spreading it is using contours with the soil, and the cost can be much lower. It's inexpensive because you can use shovels and hand tools to shape the soil. And then also if you have a larger area and you get earth moving equipment, that's going to be an added cost. But you want to keep in mind that there are many options, and you think about, we're going to spread that rainwater across the landscape. So let's look at that, because there's many benefits such as erosion control and so forth. On the left, we see this is the lawn and the front yard. On the right is what this contractor and designer, David Roberts, created. Note these little white lines. That's where we're going to start creating some of our soil contours. So see these lines here? What they're doing is they're actually digging the soil out here, placing it in a mound here, and then just smoothing it over a little bit. And what this is referred to as berman basin. And you create it on the contour that is going across the downslope, okay? And I should say, as you can see on the screen, before you dig anything, please call Underground Service Alert, call 811 or the link there that's on the screen. And that way it's a free service. They come out and check all of the utilities and anything that is underground and they do the markings. So, but you're basically going to do this so that the water then can come down this way and slowly go across the landscape, as you can see here. So it would come down, slowly soak in, more rain could come down here, slowly soak in. And you can see that there are these irrigation lines, this tubing going across the slope, and there's emitters built right into that tubing. So again, that water is even slowed and spread out. And then as you can see on the right, we have a plant being installed. It's important to make sure that one of those emitters is close to or on the root ball of the plant because the plant, when it was in a container from the nursery, that's different soil than what's in our landscape. And so we want to make sure until those roots can get growing out into the natural soil that's on your landscape that we can help them get started. So here is the end of this example, and you can see how it looks when it was, probably 6 months old and then more mature up to about 1.5 to 2 years. Here's another example. This was a garden makeover, a series of workshops as well as hands-on installation. As you can see, and I want to point out, this is right here, it's called straw wattle. That's important because we don't want the rain to flow into this the storm drain system. And look at this though, when this was grass and this one tree, over 110,000 gallons of water per year were used. So what did we do? We started creating some of those swales, those depressions in the soil. We actually put in a rain garden here, which you can see over on the right-hand side, so that, and I'll talk about rain gardens some more in just a minute, but that water can flow in there and then slowly go across. This is an example of how after the tubing with the emitters is put in, then we put down compost on the soil surface and then covered all of that with mulch. This is what the landscape looked like just recently when I saw it. It's mature and really quite attractive. So this is a good example of a river-friendly landscape. All right, next, sink it. How are we going to sink that rainwater into the soil? This is a really good resource that I refer to and refer people to quite a bit. While it is with Washington, the Washington state, there is so much information in here about how to create, how to assess your site, determine what size rain garden you need, how to figure out how much water is going to come off your roof and so forth. So this is on your resource list, your handout. So there's a lot of great information about what not to do and where not to locate your rain garden. For example, you don't want it within 10 feet of the foundation of your home or other structures. Of course, not on steep slopes. And of course, you don't want it on top of your utilities and so forth. So keep that in mind. And in this resource, there's a lot of information there. So we love plants, and in rain gardens, we can have plants. You know, basically these are depressions in the soil, just like or similar to the swales or depressions. These are just shaped differently. They're tiered. So there's a higher area, then a lower area, and then the bottom of the rain garden, as you can see here. So basically, water flows into the rain garden from one direction. It can soak in, and then you can see here's the overflow. So it's actually coming in here. So it comes in here. Then if there's a big rain event, a lot of rain, and it doesn't soak into the ground, then it can overflow and go into another swale or another rain garden. The important thing to note is that in rain gardens, water does not stay there. It doesn't stand there. It's designed by the size and the depth to only be there 1 or 2 days, and then it soaks into the soil. So there's not an issue with mosquitoes and that sort of thing. With the plants, you can see there is this zone 1, which is at the bottom, the deepest. You want those plants to be the ones that can take the most water and standing water for a day or 2. So you want to be sure that you select plants for those conditions. And then in zone 2, there's going to be plants that can take some standing water and occasionally, but it doesn't stay there. And then there might be plants up here in zone 3 that really don't want to be standing in water, okay? So you might have a plant down here that's like a rush, a juncus. And then you might have another plant here that is maybe not a miscanthus, that would be in zone 3, but maybe more like I'm trying to think of this plant that I have in mind. I'll think of it in a second for sure. It's called solidago, and it's got a yellow flower, and it would be really great. It's a native plant. Also, when you're thinking about your rain gardens, think about, and the plants, think about full sun, part sun, and group those plants together. Because if this rain garden's out in the middle of your yard in full sun, you don't want to put plants in there that need shade or part shade. So some of our resources will really help you learn more about that. All right, let's move on. This is an example, and here on the right is a perfect example of a plant that belongs in the bottom of that rain garden. And this one happens to be, it's called a swamp sunflower. So the swamp gives you the idea that it can take those conditions. But look at this. 1 inch of rain from a 1,000 square foot roof can yield 623 gallons of fresh water. That's a lot of fresh water, right? Here's another example. So this is by Dave Roberts again. This is what the before looked like. Here's a very attractive rain garden, and that the rain can come from a downspout and just sink into the ground there. I'm going to show you for a moment the process of start to finish of a renovation. And this was done by the city of Roseville for a contest called Sustain the Gains. Here's our typical lawn. It has a slope to it. Yes, it was mowed. It was approximately 1,500 square feet, and it was a real problem because there was always a lot of runoff from the irrigation system and overspray. So on the left, we have the contractor using a sod cutter. And I will say that, there's options. You can take the sod or the lawn, turf, interchangeable terms. You can take that and yes, take it to the landfill. But that's not such a great idea sometimes. If you have time, you can just take those strips of the sod, flip it over and let it decompose. You can also do what's called sheet mulching. And that's where you're taking your sod, leaving it in place, and then you're doing layers of compost, mulch, and cardboard, and mulch again. And it depends on where you are. Typically, it's compost, cardboard, and mulch. On your resources, I do have a couple of links to learn more about these methods of removing and replacing your lawn. All right, here's what's next. So you can see this is a downspout over here on the left. It's going into a creek bed, and then here's one of those swales. So we're just shaping the soil, and you can see we've used that straw wattle again to prevent runoff of and erosion of the soil. Up in the upper right-hand side, you notice there's plywood here. And that's because they've been rolling out these big, heavy boulders there, and they want to reduce the compaction of the soil. Because when soil gets compacted, it doesn't let air and water move into it and through it and let the soil soak it up, which is what we want to do. Here is the irrigation lines being spread out. They're rolling it out in what's called a grid pattern. The contractor is turning on each valve right here to flush that system out because we don't want the emitters to get clogged up with soil or debris. And then this is nifty. On each of these valves, this irrigation valve, also called a zone, there is this pop-up indicator, is what this one is called. So when the system is turned on, it just pops up and you know that it's functioning. It's very important, of course, to do regular inspections. Walk around your landscape and listen for water moving or flowing. Maybe there's a break or a crack in the line or something. And of course, spacing plants on the left, that's really important. I actually like to understand what the mature size of a plant is and then take a ruler to actually space those plants out so they can grow to maturity without requiring, they've got the space, so now they don't require a lot of pruning and excessive care, which is, really great. And then apply compost after they've been planted to the soil surface, and then that 3 or 4 inches of mulch. And this is what's called an arborist mulch. I like it because it's a tree that's been chipped, and a lot of tree companies will just come and deliver them, a big old pile, and they're all different sizes, so they break down at different times. And then we're just spreading the mulch around. We don't want it to be in contact with the base of your trees or trunks because then they can stay wet. You want a little air movement around there. You don't want disease to get started. Here are some finished photos. We did nice decorative containers here with drip emitters installed. And then there's what the one of the little swales looks like when this is about 1.5 years after it's been installed. So just enter your questions into the chat, please. We will get to those shortly. All right, Sink It. We're still in Sink It with materials and Hardscape. Again, these are materials that don't require any water at all. I encourage people to not do this on the left. This is all connected, solid concrete that water will just hit it and go off into the storm drains. Instead, we want to try to break it up. On the right, here's a parking area with just gravel. When you're using materials like this, think about what your needs are and the needs of your family. Because if somebody has a walker or a wheelchair, this can be okay in the center to go on, perhaps if it's wide enough, but this would not be a good thing if that's needed. Here's another example of connected hard concrete and stone that water just can't flow into. So break it up. Put some of these, have spaces in between your steps, have gravel or small rock. Another example, this right here is actually concrete that was broken up and, it was reused. Like if it had an old driveway that was taken out, broken up and used for that. And what you can do is slope your soil just ever so slightly away from hardscape like the sidewalk that is impermeable. Water can't soak into it so that it actually flows in here into your landscape and the soil. There's different types of pavers. That's what you're seeing here. Permeable just means that the rainwater passes around them, okay? It doesn't really go through them, but it does enable that water to soak into the soil. This does increase the cost of your project when you start putting in hardscape and permeable pavers like this. Porous, as you can see, concrete or plastic cellular grid system. And basically it does let the water soak in and through this grass. And oftentimes it's installed so that it can actually be driven on. Then we have pervious, and that means that water can go right through that type of concrete. So here, this is regular concrete that water can't flow into. And then here are pavers that are set in. And this is an example of some pavers to create a patio. And then some of that concrete that gets recycled. And they just created a little wall so that in this front yard, there could be a sitting area. All right, our last category, and please be entering your questions into the chat. I do see some coming in. So we're gonna store it. So you can go low tech if you want, and you can go higher tech or more expensive. Smaller ways to capture rain and store it, and larger ways. So on the left, here's this downspout flowing into these two tanks. In the center, here's the downspout. And what I want to point out here, there's a screen here. So that allows the water to flow in, but it doesn't allow mosquitoes and other contaminants to get into the water. And then this is actually my sister's in Key West, Florida, where she has a downspout coming in. It goes in, there's a little overflow on the right-hand side when it fills up. And she also has a way to turn it, to open it up or close it so the water can go into her landscape. One thing with this is you want to do what's called the first flush. So here are two large 550-gallon rainwater storage tanks. So this is one at my house, and I have the downspout connected to this pipe. When the first rain is coming, I just take it out so that any contaminants from the roof and so forth can go out into the landscape where the soil can cleanse it and filter it. And then I just put it right back in. Both of these have lids on them, so they're closed. Now, what I would say about this is that this gets more expensive, and I wouldn't give you a specific price because, as we all know, during these last couple of years, everything has increased in price. But I think it's really cool. This is free water you're capturing in your tank. There is this overflow. That's how it's handled here. There's a little hose bib there, so you can connect your hose. At my house, I have a total of 3,000 gallons of rainwater captured in tanks. They're dark and they're not exposed to sunlight. They're under a deck. And so the water stays really clean. And I just value that water so much. So, wow, look at this. So if you're saying, well, I have a pretty narrow area between my house and the next one, there are narrow tanks like this. This one is just mega size. It is at the city of Sacramento. They have a landscape that went in a couple of years ago. And so they didn't just want this big metal tank sitting out there. So they decorated it or, put on this siding. So let's go on for a minute. We've got some tools and resources. So this, as I said, will be up on the Citrus Heights Water District website, and it will list a lot of these resources, including on the left. This California watershed approach to landscape design takes you through every step to create your own watershed-friendly landscape. On the right here, this was a University of California research project, and I just love it because it talks about the runoff and the contaminants and what you can do, and it shows gardens from Sacramento all the way across the state. So it's got a lot of great information in there about materials and so forth. At the water boards, the California water boards, there are a whole bunch of videos to watch. There's one, The Slow the Flow. It's about 30 minutes long, but there are others that are very short that really will help give a better understanding to how we can do what we've been talking about, how you can take action. Because the reality is, droughts are cyclical. I can say that, cyclical. And they will come and go. They will repeat. That's a given. You know, we are in California. We are experiencing and will continue to experience dramatic changes in weather. And so, as this says here, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So, you know, this is in our hands. It's in your hands. We can learn how to keep more of that water on site. You know, when it's rainy, letting it soak into the soil, letting it spread and slow, capturing it so that perhaps if we go to conditions where we're not allowed to irrigate very often, you know, there's some restrictions. It's like a safety net for your landscape. You can have some in tanks and stored. And goodness, even, you know, the really low tech approach is continuing to have your buckets in the shower to capture the water while it's warming up. And then you can use that in plants around your home. So lots of strategies, okay? But I encourage you to embrace a new aesthetic. These landscapes look different, but you can have any style that you want. We just want to use the right climate appropriate and local California native plants, and then just start to create your drought and water efficient, drought resilient, water efficient landscape. We can do this now, okay? So think about the options. I hope you've been saying, I could do this, or I could do that. Think about your options, okay? So again, you know, this webinar has been recorded, and the handout will be available on the Citrus Heights Water District website. And I encourage you to sign up for the next one on April 7th, the next workshop. It's going to be in person at the Sylvan Community Garden, April 7th at 12 noon. You'll also receive surveys from your from Zoom and from the Citrus Heights Water District. Please complete those because it really does help us in our planning to help serve you and help to give you the tools and resources that you need. So let's go to the chat. How's that? I'm going to stop this for a moment, and we will do that if I can. I don't want that. I'll get there, people. Bear with me just a moment. There we go. All right, and I'm going to stop the share. And all right, so let's look at let's go to some questions here, okay? I see that there are some in the Q&A. Let me just get started. So
I put them all in the chat, so you can just go top to bottom in the chat.
oh, great. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. So can you get a rebate on a toilet already installed? That's probably a pretty quick answer.
Yes, I answered that one already. She's got the answer to that one. So we can just go on to that next one.
Okay. And yes, we do know that the recording is going to be available, and we will have the YouTube channel with the video as well. Let's see. doesn't that drip irrigation without plants actually waste water? So what I think Julie might be talking about is when you have this grid and these tubes across all of the whole area of the soil, you're thinking that's a lot of water, right? Well, roots will grow where there is water. And you would especially do that, Julie, when we have what's referred to as dense planting. So when we're going to have trees, shrubs, ground covers, and so forth, and there's going to be a lot of coverage, then you want there to be consistent, uniform watering of your soil, okay? Now, if you don't have all densely planted areas, so you have one area that's dense, a lot of plants, then you might have that grid pattern, then connect that to the next section. So if there's an area without plants, for example, and you just have mulch, then connect that with a tube that doesn't have any emitters in it to an area that then again will have a grid with emitters. So it really is what's great for your soil, plant roots, healthy plants, because as I said, roots won't go where there's no moisture, okay? Are there lists for local plants that can go into a rain garden? Oh my goodness, yes, there are. Yeah, there are. And I would encourage you when you look for lists. So one would be, go to resources like bewatersmart.info. Also go to, and maybe Rebecca, you could enter that into the chat for us. It may be on my resource list. Bewatersmart.info, a lot of information there. And also go to calscape.org, calscape.org. So that is the California Native Plant Society's website, where there is a plant database. And also if you were to Google rain gardens and rain garden plants and that sort of thing, lists will come up. And what I'd like to encourage you to do is pay attention to the plants that are good for our area, okay? Our local conditions, our sunset western garden zones is what we refer to them as. Primarily, we have 9 and 14 here. So even with California native plants, you want to look toward low and moderate water use plants, and you'll see some that are appropriate and for higher water use. Some can take moderate to high water use conditions. So those are just some of the resources. Let's see. So do the barrels need to be elevated in order to get gravity flow through a hose? They would either need to be elevated, or, sometimes people's homes are at the top of a hill or at the top, your front yard is sloping down. Then I would put them at the highest point on the side of the house, perhaps, and then you can use that gravity feed. What I also do, if I don't have the gravity, I hook up a small pump and then have my hose connected to that. That's taking energy where the gravity feed does not require any electricity. But sometimes it's wonderful during the summer, if I need to give some extra water to some of my plants and it's that area is not lower than my tanks, then I just hook that up and I can spray those plants. Let's see, is decomposed granite permeable surface when spread 1 inch or more in depth? The thing with decomposed granite is it is permeable, and mostly when it's new. Installed properly, it does need to have a light compaction to it, which decreases the permeability of it. Sometimes people will put what's called a stabilizer on the decomposed granite, and that will make it, or can make it, less permeable. There are some products that say that it still allows permeability. So, and usually 1 inch would remain quite permeable, my experience. But when I use decomposed granite, I usually put about 3 inches or 4 inches. And then beneath that, there's also a layer of what's called base rock. I use clean base rock, meaning it's been washed so that all the little bitty particles go away to allow water to soak in more. I hope that answered that question. Okay, I collect rainwater in 55-gallon containers. They get algae, and I'm curious if that is safe to use in my veggie garden. My first question is, why do they get algae? What color are they? Because rain barrels should be dark. They should be preferably in a shaded area and be covered. And so I don't ever get algae growing in any of mine. So I am curious about that. And honestly, if you're getting algae, I don't know what else is going into that water. So I can't really give a solid answer that I could back about using that. What I would suggest is getting in contact with UC Master Gardeners, and they have them in every county. So Sacramento County, Placer County, El Dorado County, and they are great about answering questions and doing research on those types of things. So just UC Master Gardeners, okay? Let's see. Will we be notified when information is available to download that it was presented? It will be ready in a couple of days. Within 2 days, I would say to check the website where you would have gone to register. I don't know that I know you're going to receive can't say that. You're going to receive a survey. And I don't know for sure if you'll receive a separate thing. So a separate email saying it's ready. So I would just check in 2 days and feel confident that it would be there. March 5th is the next class. Who is that? What is that, Rebecca?
That was from, sorry, that was my comment. The slide said that it was April 7th, but that's our next in-person class for sprinkler tune-up is actually Saturday, March 5th.
Oh, very good. Thank you for correcting that.
Sure.
Yeah, I thought that I saw that. So what I will do is I will make that change also for the PowerPoint that I send you.
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah, sprinkler tune-up, March 5th. Is that the garden? Okay. Why are you paying rainwater in utilities bills? I don't quite understand that question. I'm sorry, I don't understand that question. If maybe you can enter that in again. Do we have cash for grass rebate in Citrus Heights? And I'm sure Rebecca might have answered that. Sacramento has one, you're right. But yeah, and they don't accept residents from other areas. But Citrus Heights Water District at this time does not have cash for grass rebates. And so let's see, what other questions do we have? I think I have touched on everything. Yeah, and I don't know what that question was regarding the, why are you paying rainwater in utility bills? If the person who asked that question can just explain a little bit more. Is there anything else you'd like to say, Rebecca? Anything else to add? I really want to thank everybody for joining us. I hope that you got a lot of good information and it's encouraged you to learn more. You know, there's only so much that we can put into, a short period of time. So I do hope that you'll check out the upcoming workshops and webinars. Anything else, Rebecca?
Sure. Just wanted to let everyone know that if you haven't attended a previous class or want to just watch one again, we also have all of our classes from 2021 and forward on our website now and also on our YouTube channel. So you can go to the community page on chwd.org and then view all the classes there. And today's will be there in about a week or maybe less as well. So
great. And I see one other question just came in. Do you add anything to your tank like bleach? Ooh, no, you don't need to. Good question though. Yeah, it's not like other water or like, for example, in a fountain or water feature. you usually put some drops in there that are not harmful to birds, bees, and other creatures in our garden. And so, but no, with the rainwater tanks, that's one of the beautiful things, is that the water is very clean. Now, keep in mind, you've got your gutters on the side of your house. You want to have those covered in some way. There's a lot of different ways to do that, to prevent leaves and debris from going in there. And then, as I said, so the water that's coming down is filtered in a sense, and it goes down. And then when we get our first flush of our first rain, we want that flush of water not to go into the rainwater tank. We want it to go out into the landscape. So we just disconnect that and take that out into the landscape. There's even an automatic little gizmo that you can add, that there's a float in it. So when the water gets there, it flushes it out for you. So you don't have to go and disconnect that pipe from the downspout. But all that water then is quite clean, not to drink, but great for your landscape. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Thank you. Oh, nice. Very nice. Thank you, Sharon, for saying that you appreciated all the knowledge. And yes, Viorica. Very nice. Thank you. Yes, there'll be some good resources there. So please stay tuned. And yes, the handout will also be available, the webinar as well as the handout. It's just one page, and it has some of my favorite links for plant lists, to that State of Washington rain garden guidebook, a lot of different resources for you, also about efficient irrigation resources there. All right. If there's nothing else, you're welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us, and sign up for another workshop.
I do want to answer someone's question. They did clarify about the utility bill.
Oh, good.
They said there's a charge for rainwater because the rainwater goes in the street.
Oh.
I am guessing that might be a Sacramento County utility bill, which like the trash and stormwater, that could be what that's referring to. I don't, we don't have a charge for rainwater on our Citrus Heights Water District bills.
Yeah, and you're right, Rebecca, it's a stormwater management fee that is assessed sometimes. And so during the dry months, hopefully we're not going to have rainwater going into the storm drains. Okay. But yeah, there is a fee with some water providers for stormwater management. I collect rainwater using the downspout coming off of the rain gutters, and the rain gutter washes sediment into the 5-gallon receptacle, but a low sediment that comes off the steel shingles on the roof. Is the water okay to water vegetables? So, generally speaking, from what I understand of the question, this is just water coming off of your shingles on your roof, and they're steel, which is really good because other shingles, asphalt ones, can have little, little pieces of it come off, and that's why the screening of your, having a top of some sort on your open gutters on your roof, along your roof, helps to prevent that. But yes, I mean, if it's just, again, it would be, don't collect it when we get the very first rain. After that, collect it, and then that could be used on your edibles. We don't want to use, any water that is not clean on our edibles. But again, master gardeners have a lot of great information about edible gardening. And also, if you're interested, visit the, the Sylvan Community Garden. There are some raised beds that have been installed, and sponsored by Citrus Heights Water District. And then everybody can have their own individual raised beds and so forth. And it's a great place for learning. So a lot of good information there. So I hope that answered your question, because it sounds as though it's just coming out of your gutters and into your bucket or your 5-gallon receptacle, low sediment. Yeah, so it should be fine. The main thing is you don't want contaminants, if there's been anything sprayed up there, if you had cleaned off your siding or something, or your roof with anything, you don't want any of that, that type of water that might have soap and so forth in it. Okay. All right. Anything else? We do have a couple more minutes, or else we can just sign off. Okay. It is from Sacramento Sewer that question came. Also from the previous search, I understood that we are not allowed to collect rainwater. I think it was Sac Utility that said that. And I don't know that. In our region, it is allowed to capture rainwater. In Colorado, I understand, and there is another eastern state, they do have laws and ordinances about no one being able to capture rainwater because they want it to go into the ground first. And, for, all of the groundwater. So, but I can't speak to Sacramento Utility. Honestly, the city of Sacramento, they used to have rain barrel rebates. I'm not certain if they still do. So to my knowledge, I will say it is not illegal, but always check with your water provider, check with your city just to make sure. We always want to be sure that we're following whatever ordinance or regulations there might be. Okay. Yeah. City of Sacramento. Yeah, thank you. Rebecca said that the city of Sacramento does have those rebates. So there we go. All right, everybody. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us again. Do I have here's a question. No, I think Citrus Heights Water District does not have a rain barrel rebate. Right. Okay. All right. If we've answered all the questions, then you're welcome. Thanks for joining us today, everybody. Look forward to seeing you again in the future. And save water, okay? And capture rain. Take care.